Hi, everyone. I'm Casey Tierney. I'm on the investment team here at the Legal Tech Fund. Today on In Studio, I'm joined by Tim LaBelle, co-founder and CEO of UpDraft. As a bit of background, technical accounting expertise is really scarce. People who can take complex deal structures, apply the right GAAP guidance, and produce audit-ready documentation are rare, expensive, and stretched very thin. Every transaction that lands on their desk is a potential bottleneck. Tim and his team are building AI agents purpose-built for this work: contract analysis, guidance research, memo writing, the full technical accounting workflow end-to-end. Tim, really great to have you in the studio. Let's start with what drew you to this problem.
Yeah, thanks, Casey. So I have 15 years of experience in client service and corporate accounting. I started my career in audit at PwC in Boston, and then I was a managing director at CFGI, which is one of the largest national accounting advisory firms in the U.S. Specialized in technical accounting, and basically was slowly driven insane by the lack of purpose-built tools and the ever shrinking pool of talent for people to help me actually do the job.
Awesome. And for anyone not familiar with UpDraft yet, can you talk a little bit about what does the platform do and what problem it solves?
Yeah, basically UpDraft is made to be, it's an AI agent that does technical accounting and financial reporting with the skill and quality of a seasoned corporate CPA. Basically an extension of an expert with 12 to 15 years of experience so it can augment either accounting advisory teams in the client service space or in-house teams in the corporate accounting space. And what technical accounting really is the translation layer between business in the legal world and accounting and finance. And so these people sit at the intersection of business operations and transactions that are happening. They have to understand the legal aspects of all these, of every transaction that happens, and understand the GAAP implications from that. And because it's such a critical skill set and something that's shrinking in the workplace right now, it's a great time to leverage the AI technology to really augment teams and fix that bottleneck.
And you talked a little bit about this in, your basically decades of experience, so you probably experienced it firsthand. Why is technical accounting expertise so scarce?
Yeah, great question. So it's something that you don't get trained on explicitly. You only start to experience this higher level work when you have 6, 7, 8 years experience already, either at a corporate accounting team or from public accounting, like working at one of the big four. So as the number of accountants and CPAs that are being produced in the industry has fallen off a cliff, that pipeline has been drying up. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have a huge demographic cliff with baby boomers retiring. And so the average age of someone leaving the profession, or the average experience, has actually gone from 6 years, 20 years ago, to 12 years. That's due to all the experienced people retiring and a lack of people that are coming in to take their space. And that all means that this skill set that's always been scarce is now, basically very quickly evaporating.
And it sounds like, now might be a great time for technology and AI to help fill in that gap. What would you say is different about this moment that makes an AI native solution maybe more viable than it was before?
Yeah, obviously the improvement in the technology has come leaps and bounds from just when, GPT-2 to, ChatGPT to really the breakthroughs in 2025 is really when LLMs became capable of handling the complexity with the right harness to do this type of work. And you pair that with a deep pain point in accounting. Accounting, a lot like law, is a deeply kind of conservative profession. And so you need a huge driver internally, a huge problem that is the shortage of the skill set and this dying breed of CPA to drive the attitude for change. And it just honestly so happens to pair with a huge technological advancement in these underlying LLMs to basically make it the perfect time to build this type of technology and really have it adopted very quickly.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And I mean, even though the general purpose tools are progressing very quickly, I think you and I probably agree that domain specificity is still super important. Can you talk a little bit about how that shows up in UpDraft versus some of the general purpose tools out there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, ChatGPT or Claude are probably probably the greatest general productivity tools ever created, but they are for general purpose, and they don't go deep into something like technical accounting or SEC reporting to the level of methodical process and analytical procedure that you need, because any analytical work that could involve analyzing 500 pages of documents and writing out basically a position paper that has 30 different steps on it. Any one of those steps is wrong, the entire thing is wrong. And so that kind of adherence to the underlying concepts is really where UpDraft excels. It's anchored in GAAP concepts fundamentally and understands the linkage between what it's analyzing and these underlying concepts, and is able to then operationalize that into a very methodical approach that mimics exactly how an experienced CPA would approach a problem.
That's great. And one thing that you brought up a minute ago that is obviously very interesting to us as legal tech investors is this idea that law firms and in-house teams are generating the documents that UpDraft is then analyzing, and kind of the interface between legal, accounting, and business. What would you say is important for the legal teams to understand about how accounting teams are then using the technology on the back end to understand this stuff?
Yeah, it's really comes down to even before a deal is signed. Like for example, I used to get all these urgent calls from controllers or my clients, where an enterprise deal with terms being changed and had to be signed by midnight. And CFO was like waiting outside, literally waiting outside a controller's office for an answer on like what is the GAAP implication. So there's this delay or this fog between legal and finance and sales and accounting that these platforms, UpDraft can basically burn that off and really give insight and collaborative tool for what happens when I change this in the legal world, what's the impact in the GAAP world. And so having that clear line of sight and communication between teams, even before a deal is signed, it's going to be super powerful. And after that, really shortening the time frame of when you can get insights into financial reporting and having that feedback mechanism almost in real time is really going to make people's lives a lot easier and really prevent the CFO from having a surprise in terms of what he thought his profitability, his guidance was going to be, and where it turned out because someone was changing terms in a contract that wasn't caught in time, and really help the legal teams that are trying to negotiate this better understand in that feedback loop, like what they should avoid, and really collaborate with other people on their team in a much more frictionless manner.
Yeah, and that's definitely an opportunity that we see as well. We think that this technology can kind of help some of those siloed business units, like you said, maybe collaborate a little bit better and advance the business sort of faster and put them in a stronger position. So glad to hear that UpDraft can help there. You also mentioned that UpDraft serves enterprise teams, controllers, and advisory firms. How would you describe the difference between those segments and what they mean? And, I guess, what was your experience building a product that could serve all three segments?
Yeah, great question. So there's different ways that this pain manifests depending on where you are in the market. So enterprise teams, you think Fortune 500 companies are doing a high volume of really complex deals. Like they're not doing 12-page little mini SaaS agreements. They're doing multi-year structures of deals that are very custom negotiated. And at the same time, accounting firms who are basically that outsourced expertise for the corporate accounting teams are on the other side of that coin. So they're dealing with complexities all across the spectrum, from revenue to reorganizations to stock compensation. It really starts with an agent that's super capable of understanding the transactional nature of simple transactions and very complex transactions, and is also anchored in GAAP concepts and understands the connections between everything it's analyzing and its underlying concepts. And then on the layer on top is we've customized that. And so if you're a middle market controller, you're not doing a ton of technical accounting, but it's all on your plate because you don't have the team size to do that. You can jump to UpDraft and basically delegate an end-to-end really complex project. And if you're a partner or you're a core technical accounting director at a Fortune 500 company, you can spend, and we do have accounting partners spending their entire day in UpDraft, and they're using it for everything from end-to-end assignments to quick analysis to prepping for calls. And so the flexibility agent really allows us to build a user interface on top and a user experience that matches the pain points and the problems that we're trying to solve for our different customers.
That makes a lot of sense. And, you know, one thing that we understand, and I'm sure you probably agree, is that auditability and traceability is very important here. Would love for you to talk about how UpDraft handles, things like traceability and maybe expand on why it matters and like the financial reporting side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is one of the core things that we worked on. We actually built our own AI native PDF reader to show every source document, every little paragraph is annotated. And whatever the agent is doing, producing with one click, you can zoom back to, document 5 out of a 50-page closing binder, the exact paragraph, and it'll be highlighted exactly what the agent is thinking about as it goes through this methodical analytical process. In that same way, you can zoom into exactly the step A of a GAAP accounting guidance criteria that it's applying. And so you can go from deliverable back to source document and follow the exact chain of thought that the agent is doing at all times. And that was a non-negotiable, just building the product. And so we have an experience where you can see something being created in real time, delegate really complex workflows, whether it's building a spreadsheet or creating an accounting position paper, and very, very easily go into a window at any part of that workflow and see the exact source document and that part of it and how it's looped into that exact step. And so it's basically a frictionless review process with complete transparency between what source of the information is, how it's being thought about, and then how it's being analyzed, and then ultimately documented in whatever deliverable you're producing.
And so even though the technology is super advanced these days and you've got, all of the traceability elements that you just mentioned, I think the human element is still important here. Would you say that there's an area of the product where human judgment still sits? Is that important to you all as a team?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, without my experience of 15 years in the space, and what a lot of people miss is that there's a ton of judgment in accounting. This is not a single lane road. This is not black and white. This is a multi-lane highway where you can be a lot of places and take different exits to get to the kind of the same destination and still be right. And so understanding how a team's own internal policies apply, even a more narrow focus than the GAAP guidance, and also having the agent understand where it's in a judgment situation and there's a fork in the road and you have to go left and right. And UpDraft will compile the evidence of, if we go this way or this way, what does that look like? And really get the expert to that decision point faster, where really their critical judgment is the most value add. And it will enable that person to quickly understand exactly the fact pattern and how best to navigate that. And then go back to maybe automating the more routine items. And so it really helps automate probably about 80% of the work, and really helps the expert focus on those really high judgment calls. And when you get to a judgment situation, you can still use UpDraft to help you weigh that and understand the implications of your own policies versus the auditor prescribed methodologies. And maybe if there's a favorable accounting outcome, how you can possibly navigate there while having a very supportable position.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting parallel with legal as well, where there's still a lot of judgment and interpretation, and we think that it's very important to kind of keep that aspect embedded in these products. So really, really interested in your perspective there. So before we jump, I would love to hear, and our audience would love to hear as well, where do you think this industry is going in the next 5 years?
That great question again. I think, and this is probably isn't breaking news, but really an agent forward, agent first approach to this high volume but complex work, where the first stop for any of these is going to go through a vetted system, a industry specific system of agentic workflows before it even lands on an expert's plate, and that will be able to be done almost automatically. And then expanding from there, if you can have your finance and legal, sales and accounting all on one platform, and you're all be able to view things from each other's lens and have that done almost automatically and almost magically for you, so you can understand the implications from every other stakeholder. That's really where I think things are going in the next couple of years. People figure out exactly what the user experience should be. People really refine how they can build these harnesses, like what we're doing at UpDraft. Like, how do we get the most out of these models for this specific domain? And then how do we replicate those learnings for all the other stakeholders, so we can all kind of be in this happy place where we can understand without a ton of lag and delay, or getting requests at midnight, what other stakeholders are thinking and what they need and what the outcomes are. And that will just enable a frictionless outcome and a lot more informed decision making by executives. And so, in short, I think there's going to be a unified platform that's going to probably combine a lot of this vertical expertise, or at least have linkages on the back end to be able to talk to other platforms, just as you want to be able to talk to your coworkers and other departments as well.
Awesome. Well, we are really looking forward to seeing that future play out, and think that UpDraft's going to be a huge part of it. Thank you so much for joining us in studio, Tim. It's good to see you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Casey. Great questions.